Hey guys, it's Kip with DT4 EMS, and I'm hanging out with Ed Van Wagner from Jersey City. And I will tell you what, he was a guy that left an impression on me, not only because he's just an all-around good dude, coming and working in a place that's just full of really awesome people in a neat location, but during the instructor portion of the class, he ended up dropping a bombshell on first. And he's one that you've heard me talk about probably in the past, where people that have known him for quite some time are looking around the room going, what? Like they had no idea because of an attack that happened with him. The point of it was, is just like we've said before, that sometimes what happens after an assault is often worse than the assault itself. And so we'll have him get into that in just a little bit. But before we do so, I'm just going to have Ed kind of tell you a little bit about, what he does, how he got into EMS and nursing, and we'll just start there. So here's Ed.
Yeah, my name's Ed. I started in EMS years ago. Started off as an EMT like everybody else. Basically moved on to be a paramedic. I guess it was about 18, 19 years ago. I said, where was the roughest place around here that I could work? And a lot of people had said Newark. So I said, okay, I'll give that a shot. So I got hired there, worked there as an EMT, as a paramedic for quite a long time. It's for about 10 years. I needed a new change. I needed a challenge. And, the streets are always a little bit on the rough side. So I decided to get my RN license. So I became a registered nurse, I guess, about 12 years ago, and started working in the ICU, surgical trauma up there in Newark. And I was there for a number of years, and I found that many of the time there were just as many challenges up there as there were in the streets. I mean, I thought I was going to have the easier time being on the inside, and many of the time, many of the challenges there were just as daunting on the inside as much as on the outside. So I did that for about 5 years, and then after I left there, started moving around a little bit. I left Newark, just got hired by a couple of other places, and one of the places I always wanted to work was Jersey City. I heard a lot of great things about it, and I've been there for about 4 years now.
And so now I take it then you're still doing the RN thing and the EMS thing? You still do both, or just the one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I work, the ambulance I work is a hybrid unit, so we get to, I work as a paramedic there and also as an RN when we do critical care transport. So it's sort of a 50-50 job. I have to maintain both my license and my certification. And we basically do it all on that unit. So we do the transports, we do the paramedic work and whatnot. So it's good. It's very interesting. And like you said, guys, it's a progressive system. The people up there are tough. They're not guys, but they're great to work with, and I really enjoy my job there.
Yeah, well, and it was obvious too while I was there that the people really respected you, and they really liked you as well. When you heard the class was coming up, did you have some initial thoughts, or did you have any preconceptions, or what were you thinking before you ever even took the class?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. I mean, right from my my original days in Newark, I did a class like Eve. I've been a competitive karate practitioner for many years. I practiced Aikido, Judo. That just happened to be my chosen passion. And then when I started in Newark, I had been taught a lot of pretty hard, considerably destructive moves. And I realized right off the bat when I became an EMT and started doing EMS work that a lot of that really just was not applicable to the situations that we found. So, I mean, right off the bat, when I started in this profession, I realized that we really hadn't been trained in this aspect. I had voiced for many years that we needed something along the lines of the EVE program. Come up that made any sense. Never really got to the bottom of it, but I mean, worked over police department self-defense courses, whatnot, just didn't seem to make any sense, because what police officers do is completely than what we do. Courses that over the years came out very milquetoast, lukewarm concepts that were their heart were in the right place, but they just did not have. Basically, I just said, this stuff's going to get me killed in the street if I try to use it. This is not effective. I felt that we needed something along the lines of what it really is in the EVE program, but I hadn't found it. When we found out that DT for EMS was going to be offered, I It's a really good sell. It really is a good presentation. But like anything else, I mean, you could have a shiny veneer on it, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't hold up in the street and have any practicality, then it's worthless. So I did come into the program with high hopes, but a lot of trepidation because everything that I had come across in 2 decades of work just be ineffective towards what we needed. Was selected along with the other instructors to come to the course. Uh, Obviously, I researched it a little bit. It looked good. Still had a lot of trepidation, but I have to say that both in the training and now that we've been teaching it for over a year, I feel that it's just an absolute wonderful course. Like I say to everybody, and I mean, I talk about it a lot, there's no way to really quantify it unless people actually go through it. There's so many aspects of it that are important to our in the streets, in the hospital, the mind concept, the way to have your attitude when you're going into a situation. The analogy I always use is like the difficult airway program that is going around and that many people have taken is that it takes what used to be just a concept, which was intubation, like an algorithmic system, trains your mind to think about how to, assess, to pre-plan, sharp for when these violent encounters do occur. In addition to it, I mean, it has the physical aspect courses don't have, and that I like too because it trains you to avoid these situations and to mitigate these situations if they come up. Backed into a corner and you have to go hands-on. Very, very easy to learn, practical, highly effective techniques from a 280-pound can use to when many of our people in Newark, in Jersey City now, are rather short in stature, rather slender, and they found the techniques just as effective. So enough about the course. I've felt for a very long time teaching this that, I don't teach nonsense courses. I'm not into taking them. I'm not into teaching them. Very impressed with this course. I feel that it's extremely practical, extremely applicable to both the EMS and the intra-hospital environment, and I'm very proud to be a part of it.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm really glad you are a part of it. And it was, I had already, when, Anthony and I had talked, and I made it perfectly clear when I was there with you guys during the instructor portion, because of course we have the end user message, but then we have, some of the things that are unique to us with why we teach the way that we teach to our, our people. But it was so cool that as, to see the room, meaning of your guys, go from that very like this to where you can get to watch the build and you see it change, but then now that you guys are delivering the message yourselves, and then now you've got peers who are turning around and leaving going, man, that was, oh my gosh, that makes sense. And see, that's the one part I wish we could get people to be a fly on the wall. They've been so burnt, or they've been, lied to or deceived or whatever it be. It's the widget thing. You take something, you paint it blue, you can, sell it to EMS. You paint it red, you sell it to fire. You paint it black, you sell it to SWAT. It's just a matter of, people have been burned by that theory for so long that they just don't understand that, we are mission specific. And the reason that we get the people like you saying what you're saying is because we're a bunch of frontline people ourselves that surrounded ourselves with a bunch of other smart people that went, hey, what works more often than not for this, and then that's how we ended up with, where we are. But I wholeheartely thank you for the kind words. And I'm very glad that you're part of the teaching team. Now, with that being said, so when you're in class, would you agree that we had a good time?
No, absolutely. It was great to have you.
And we, and did you watch or were you able to see people go from, I need to change that, because let me ask the question like this to make it more clear. Now that you've been instructing, do you think you've witnessed it from an instructor perspective on your frontline staff of them coming in like this, and then within about the third or fourth hour, they're now leaning forward, hanging on about every word that you say? Have you been able to see any of that stuff happen?
Oh, absolutely. As you well know, in North Jersey, we're not lacking in strong opinions and attitudes. And especially in Jersey City and in Newark and in the urban environments around here, there has been a lot of burnout over the years. There's a lot of cynical attitudes. People, it's not a slow system. It's not an easy system to be a part of. And when this program first came out, the instructors certainly had our doubts about it. We were hoping for the best, but we were really expecting the worst, and we were very pleasantly surprised. And as we teach it, we found that the overall response from everybody has been overwhelming. And I think that I really wish, like you said, that other agencies could be flies on the walls for this, because a lot of people, especially in our project, come in with a cynical attitude. Why do we have to be compelled to teach this? Is this some sort of chop sake course? One lady was like, I've practiced, Taekwondo for 8 years. What are you going to teach me? And there was a lot of closed-mindedness, and I think that comes, like you said, just from the general burnout from our profession, and also people just feeling like they're uncared for, depending on the project that they work for and the system that they're a part of. So there were a lot of strong opinions going in, and it's a wonderful feeling seeing in the looks of the people's faces when, like you said, like 3 to 4 hours in, they realize that, of course, this isn't an attempt to profit in any way, shape, or form. This is about the staff. This is about our colleagues, our brothers and our sisters in this profession, which, I feel strongly that this is a profession, and I feel that these are my brothers and sisters. And when I hear that one of my brothers or one of my sisters has been seriously injured, I take it absolutely to heart. And the fact that we're teaching a course that's highly effective, that's very practical, and has real-life applications in the field, and may very well save somebody from going through the trauma that, myself and other people have gone through in the past. Even if we're just able to avoid, 1 or 2, then it's worth it. And the simple fact is, I think that it's going to do a lot more than that, especially the more we spread the word.
Oh, and the thing is that you're proof of that, and your group is proof of it. And it's so awesome that, because that's what actually begins to drive you and makes it even, more important, or you become more passionate about it, is because if we've been victimized, which there is no if, we have, and we'll obviously get to your part in a moment, but it's that seeing the stripping away that we accomplish. Meaning, the reason that there are so many attitudes, and it was like what you said a moment ago, which was they've either been felt uncared for, or there's this lack of worth or whatever. But even though that's not a truth, it is a truth, meaning that they are cared for. But we didn't prepare them for what they're really going to face. And so we've had this whole, culture shift that we've got to try to get these people back to who they were. Who were you when you started? Why did you even start? Why did you become an EMT? Why did you become a medic? And so when you get people to think like that and to go back, they go, man, I did it, because of, they cared, or they wanted to help. And one of the best ways to say it is if people come in for a job in public service, whether it be a fireman, a paramedic, a nurse, an EMT, a police officer, they didn't do it for the money. They never came in for money or for glory. They came in because they felt a strong desire to help others. And what we found, particularly in the EMS setting, and now even, we see it in the nursing setting as well, but there's been such a browbeating and such a, you're supposed to take violence and it's just part of your job and so on and so forth, that it's this confusion that's led to the fake wall being put up. And so we have to spend that first 3 or 4 hours stripping away the wall just to get that person to a point to where they can even listen to us. Once, we strip it away and we see who they truly are as a person, then all the real learning just starts taking off. Well, you can't get people who have never taken the program to understand that they go, well, yeah, I can go in and teach them how to punch and kick, and I can teach them eye gouging and groin stomping and stabbing or shooting or whatever it is to win that moment in time. But they're not understanding the people that we need to reach, nor are they understanding how you reach them. And it goes back to, we would do this. I did it. I know you did, being in it as long as you have. But my first medic job was like $6.35 an hour. That's what I got as a medic, $6.35 an hour as a paramedic in the state of Florida. So when you look back at that, you go, man, you certainly weren't doing it for money, you know. But I say all that to say this, that you know, what makes me happy is when I hear you and others of your cadre get a chance to witness it in those people. Because when you see them come in, and you might not really know them, you know, but they're sitting here hard like this, and then within just a short time, everybody starts getting involved. You know what I mean? Because it's like I say, even in the instructor class, when we're going, you know, I'm looking at the instructors doing the same thing on that day 3 that they were doing that first, you know, opening few hours of still like, you know, why? You know, why do I have to do this? And then we have to do the same thing in the instructor portion to go, the reason I'm asking you to be like this is so that you can strip it away. You know, you're spoon feeding them because I spoon fed you, you know, and we're just trying to get them to the truth. So it's a neat thing, but it's even better now, because now when I get to hear, you know, you and Anthony and some of the others, you know, from your cadre talking about how you get to witness it in your people, it's awesome, because it's just the truth. You know, we created a class the way we always wanted to attend a class. And then on top of that, it's speaking the truth. And there's nothing better in the world than, you know, getting up and being able to speak the truth in front of a bunch of people that already know the truth. They've just been told to believe a lie. And then when they see the truth, they start going, yeah, that's right. And then we turn them into a bunch of sharks, you know, but that's all good too. But anyway, there was a moment, and I don't remember whether it was, again, I don't remember if it was day 3, day 4, but I know it was the instructor side of it. It wasn't, I don't believe, during the initial portion. I don't think so on your group. But it was when you had dropped a bomb, because one of the things that we talk about around the country is when I do my, you know, get everybody to raise their hand if they've ever faced a criminal assault. And we find that between 80 and 100% have been criminally assaulted on the job. We're not talking about that confused grandma. We're talking about an actual criminal attack. But yet only 2 to 3% ever really reported it. And so it wasn't until I was talking with Anthony that he, you know, kind of tell me his perspective when he heard you, you know, say what you said. But his brain was kind of like, what? This guy? I mean, this guy's like the nicest guy, you know, ever. I mean, this guy's like a great guy. But we see it a lot, you know. I mean, now you're probably starting to hear some of those stories, but do you remember which day it was? Was it the day 3, day 4?
I think it was day 4 that we were that conversation came up that you're talking about. Yeah,
because we were it was during the practical portion though too. It wasn't in the classroom. It was when we were standing in that room that local, you know, martial arts guy uses as their kind of like outreach or whatever. But you know, if you don't mind, or whatever part you'd like to, because it really made me happy when Anthony told me that they kind of that you guys now have your own way of doing the emotional roller coaster, and then they bring you in, you kind of deliver kind of like your part that hits home with everybody, and then they're like, oh my gosh. Do you want to kind of talk about how that goes and what you tell your people, or what you even told us that day? I mean, anything you want to talk about on that, because that is that whole, what happens after the assault is often worse than the assault itself, and the whole underreporting thing, and it goes on and nobody knows. I mean, you're proof.
Well, the story, as you well know, was I was working as an RN. It's about, I guess it was about 7 or 8 years ago now, and you know, I had worked in Newark in the streets for many years, and we had a violent patient on the unit, potentially violent patient, and a lot of the other nurses were concerned about being in the room with him, and they had asked if, you know, I could take the lion's share of the shifts with him. So because he had been an inpatient for some time. And, you know, like I had said before, I mean, I had done a lot of martial arts as a kid. I'd worked in the field for a very long time. So I certainly am nothing along the lines of a Superman, but, you know, I said, yeah, you know, I'll keep an eye on him. I'll take him, just, you know, basically took the hit for the unit, pardon the pun. But while I was there and I was taking care of him one day, I dropped to my guard just for a few seconds, and he actually kicked me in the face. He kicked me so hard that I fell backwards and struck my head on the tile. Was out for, they say, about 5 minutes. I woke up, the trauma physician was there, the nurses were there all around me and everything like that, and got taken down to the ER. And I ended up having a pretty significant cerebral contusion. And what happened was, well, the next week or so, a week to 2 weeks, I developed short-term memory loss as a result. It was pretty scary. Couldn't remember where I was going from one step to the next. things. Couldn't be trusted to even like cook at my house because I'd forget that I was cooking. One day I almost burnt the house down because I just walked away from it. And it was a very traumatizing thing in the aspect that I had a wife, three young children. I was the sole provider at the time. And the thing that I think was the worst of it, at least from my personal perspective, was when my wife and I sat down and I said, I'm a critical care nurse. You know, everything that I do requires a memory. And if this ends up being permanent, you know, what are we going to do? And, you know, it was a very traumatizing moment in that aspect. Interesting enough, and one thing maybe I haven't mentioned to you or to the other instructors is that up until your class, I had never mentioned that in a public forum to anybody. Well, here I am. It's like, you know, I'm much older than a lot of the other instructors. I'm sort of the senior man on the tour, every tour I'm on. And yet this was not something that I felt was really needed to be mentioned. And, you know, it's interesting when you bring up that, you know, this really hits home to a lot of people and drives it home because really I was the victim of a criminal assault and it happened on the job. I was injured. You know, thank God I recovered after some time and I'm 100% now. I certainly feel for people who have that permanently because it was a horrible thing to go through. But it just was very interesting that, you know, I kind of kept that to myself, you know, whether it be pride or embarrassment or whatever the reasoning behind it, but I never felt that it was really something that I wanted to share. And when that day came out and everybody was talking about, you know, their experiences with being victimized and whatnot, I just felt like telling people, and you know, that's when it came out.
Well, and it's like every time that I get someone like yourself to speak of an incident, because would you agree that while it wasn't necessarily life-threatening, you didn't die, you weren't permanently injured or scarred per se on the outside, but would you not agree that you know, an assault, while not life-threatening, most certainly is life-changing? Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, we've discussed that at length in the program, and you know, between the other instructors, I mean, we discuss that on a regular basis. I personally agree wholeheartedly. I mean, it changed me, really made me question whether or not I still wanted to do this as a profession. I've always been a bedside, hands-on guy. I mean, I'm not a manager. I'm not a administrator type person. I mean, I like being elbows deep, boots in the field. But it definitely created an anxiety in me. You know, even though I do this out of passion, I mainly do it out of a paycheck, and I, you know, for a reason. So, you know, if I get injured, the thought that was always in the back, survive on workers' comp. You know, I need to be able to keep working. And I think that that did definitely plant the seed in my head of just about, you know, potentially getting hurt again. And if I did have a passion about what we do now, before, passion about it now, being a personal victim of workplace violence.
Well, and it's so funny that you say it like that because, you know, as you know, because you went through the program, that this was just a hobby. I mean, I had no, you know, idea, desire to make a living, which I most certainly don't do very well at this. You know, it is, you know, it was a hobby. But then once I was carjacked and nobody essentially cared, you know, I mean, it was like, literally, that's the way I felt about it. And like you, I didn't like to talk about it. I didn't, you know, well, I was actually more embarrassed than anything because it was like, here I am, you know, martial arts guy, running my own martial arts school, and I teach law enforcement, DT, and I'm the guy that created this program, and some dude was able to carjack me and was able to punch me, and, you know, so it was much of an embarrassment and a shameful thing. But there's most certainly, it's an entire cultural thing. You know, it is like, I cannot begin to tell you how many instructors over the years would go back and teach, and then would you know, teach their first class. And once they start getting people past the rigidity and the denial or the holding it in, that they start, you know, going, oh my God, how did I not know that happened to you? Or nobody told us that. Or, you know, hey, our kids go to college together. How did I not know this happened to you? Why? It's our culture, man. You know, and yet, you know, ridicule people that get beat up on the job in healthcare as if they were supposed to have been superhuman. You know, I mean, if a cop gets shot, no other cops show up and laugh at him. If a firefighter gets burned, other firefighters don't show up at the hospital and laugh at him and tell him he looks like Freddy Krueger. But if a paramedic gets beat up, or an EMT gets beat up, or a nurse gets beat up, particularly like in the ED setting, you know, it's not as bad on the floor as it would be in other places, but the ED setting and all the others, like pre-hospital and for EMT, medic, or even firefighter on the EMS scene, they want to make fun of them. I mean, because whether it be Eric's story or, you know, Lynn's or any of those others that go on with zero support or ridiculed for even, you know, wanting to press charges. And, you know, it's a whole culture thing. But, you know, we mentioned it before because, like I said, when, you know, I watched the room and, you know, when you were telling your story to the peers, you could just see, you know, the emotion in everybody's faces. I mean, it was obvious because their look was that of, what? What? Him? What? Why? You know, and even Anthony, you know, had mentioned that. But like you said, so here you are, educated, experienced, most certainly, you know, not a person that walks around, you know, oblivious to their surroundings, but one moment in time changed everything, you know. And I'm asking, I mean, just throwing this out there, but do you think it would have been different had you have received support immediately by, like, say, administration, peers, law enforcement? Say peers would have been going, oh my gosh, you know, man, and been right there, you know, at your bedside and do everything, and then have administration going, what else can we do for you? If you would have, you know, let's say you'd been injured with the back, or you know, from lifting someone, or, you know what I mean, had something else occur, but then had all this other tons of support, but yet, you know, and then the police showing up going, man, come on, let's make sure that this, you know, we're going to press these charges. We want this person, you know, prosecuted for the criminal act. And do you think you would have seen things maybe a little bit differently had you received that kind of immediate support?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, of course, you know, I'd worked as an EMS person for years, and anytime a cop twisted an ankle, I mean, you had 4 to 5 cops in that ER checking on their brother or their sister. You know, I worked in a burn ICU for a short time, and, you know, if there was a firefighter up there, you couldn't find the cafeteria without at least 4 or 5 firefighters between visiting their brother or their sister and making sure that everything's all right. Some of the management team was considerably caring and sympathetic. Overall, the administration was rather apathetic to the situation. At one point, with one of the administrators, I brought up pressing criminal charges because I felt I was criminally assaulted. Still wasn't back to work, but still considerably traumatized. And she looked at me like I had 3 heads. Like, it was, you know, it was just, well, why would we do that? And like you had mentioned when we were together, you know, you were working as a paramedic. God forbid that had happened when you were a police officer. I mean, there would have people lined up around the block to support you and everything like that. And you were criminally assaulted in that ambulance, and they were looking at you like you had 3 heads over the fact that you wanted this person held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason in our culture, whether it's EMS or also inside in the nursing field, in the intra-hospital environment for the hospital workers in there, it's just considered, and I guess culturally been considered, part of the job. One of my close friends, who's been working as an ER nurse for a year, he was just recently assaulted in the ER he works in. He had a tooth chipped. He was rolling on the ground with the guy, and the response of the staff, just like you said, was, well, finally happened to you. We didn't think it would take that long. And I mean, what a horrible thing to say to somebody who's been assaulted, who's been injured. I mean, you know, this is a young guy, you know, he's still, you know, going out on dates and stuff like that, and now he's missing part of his tooth. I mean, you know, the whole concept in this field of how, you know, we look at these things, you know, and to nobody's fault. It's just the way that the culture has developed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud to be a part of the effort to change that, so that we don't look at it like this is part of the job, or that it's okay that this happens to us.
Well,
Because if that same individual, like, you know, assaulted a crossing guard, or assaulted, just a regular office worker, I mean, the book would be thrown at him. But because you're wearing scrubs, or because you're wearing, you know, an EMT or a paramedic uniform, you know, even our own peers have a tendency to look at it as if, you know, it's okay, and it's not.
well, and You know, and that's, would you not agree, a huge part of what we've been trying to do. The whole "there is no such thing as a combative patient" came from DT4 EMS. The whole idea of there's a moment in time when a person may no longer even be considered a patient. You know, I mean, all this stuff that we're trying to do is just to say, look, we want our people to be critical thinkers, man. You know, don't you think it's funny that if you worked in a convenience store and they say, look, if it's a robbery, you know, not only do you want to give the guy anything he wants right away, just give it to him, you know, but help him, man, offer to help carry the register out to the car. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, violence in any other type of profession is discussed, as well as giving people reasonable options, you know, when they face that type of a situation, except for healthcare. And, you know, instead we just leave our people to do, just do whatever it takes to go home without qualifying it with what may or may not be reasonable. And so it's like, you know, I agree. And I was the same way. Once I started really researching what the problem was, you know, I started going, oh my gosh, here it is. This is it. This is what the problem is. And it goes back, it's culture. You know, what is on a patient, what is not reasonable, you know, when it comes to using force. And, you know, it's those things. It is that trying to get people to understand that one moment in time means everything. One stinking moment. And, you know, right across the way from you guys, can you imagine? And now, of course, I obviously don't feel anything like what her, you know, family feels, but I was enraged because I have, what do we have, like 14 or 15 different, whether it be ambulance thefts or carjackings that we have reports of in our assault on staff logs. It's why I went berserk over, you know, how I was treated. You know, of course, I didn't let everybody know that until later, but it's like you look at the big picture and go, no, wait a minute. One moment in time, could one moment of time have made a difference? Who knows? But if that person has never been given the opportunity to at least have some form of critical thinking skill, I equate her carjacking that just occurred, that killed her, as the same as like the shooting kind. And I don't know if I may have brought this up to you. I know I talked to Anthony about it, but it was a thing of saying, if, you know, because, you know, immediately we are helpers, fixers, we care, that's what we do. And so at that moment, when this is now happening, was there ever a time that a person could go pause? And so I have to equate it and go, if it's let's say it's an active shooter where we've been lulled in, like Kansas City, St. Louis, you know, some of the others where that they were drawn in West Webster, where the fire was set and then the responders were lured in so that they could, you know, shoot them. Well, if I'm that person, I get off the truck and I'm I'm a medic, you know, and my partner's in the driver's seat and we're at a fire standby because it's a truck fire, a house fire, whatever it is, just like those guys did, just like, you know, Mary Seymour and Ryan Hummer and the guys in West Webster. So they arrive, I step out, I grab the rescue bag, and bam, I catch a bullet and I'm on the ground. The person in the driver's seat, if never given the option, I start, and I think we even used it in your class because I know we've been using it for a while. I'm like, you know, I'm down here, I'm screaming for help. You know, what are you going to do? And if that person, if I lull them into it, they're like, I'm going to come help you. And I'm like, great, bang. You just caught a bullet next, you know, because what does a sniper want? More bodies, right? It's the same. You could go, well, and during that carjacking, you're like, well, your partner's in the truck. Go save. Wait a minute. You know, all I'm saying, if you want to because you want to and you understand the risks, that's one thing. But if you're compelled to because I'm a helper, I'm a fixer, but I have no idea of what I should or should not do. You know, people need to understand that you could be my best friend. You know, our wives could be best friends. Our kids are growing up together. And if you step off the truck and catch a bullet, the first thing Kip has to do is get to cover, and we will formulate a plan to get to you to help you from cover. But I can't come out there and become that next victim because that's what the sniper wants. And so granted, in that moment, and what I ask is, you know, that guy was, whether he was on drugs or, you know, high or drunk or whatever it may have been, it had to end in a fatality for anybody to really address it and to consider it and to go, wait a minute, look, well, we've got 15 others. But yet nobody's talking about those. And by God, hers is important. And we'll, you know, she needs to be recognized and remembered. But as I sit, the frustration just mounts because we go, look, so you had a girl stabbed 105 times on Thanksgiving that I rant and rave about, right? And I get to meet her and her family, you know, face to face, which is, of course, you know, life altering to me. But yet we just have had another one. So you had the shooting that went on from a domestic, obviously at the nursing homes. It just occurred. 2 people were shot and the police chief was shot. And I mean, that's the one. And then there was just a hostage situation where the SWAT guys just, killed the guy, and the other situation, it just in the last couple of days. And yet you still can't get people to go, listen, I mean, I don't know, man. Would you agree?
It's crazy. Like, I mean, just like you said, I mean, that situation with Fidney and the EMS worker being run over by an ambulance. I mean, that was front page news around here for quite some time. And, it was a couple of weeks ago. I happened to mention to somebody that I teach DT for EMS, and, it's about violence against healthcare workers, EMS workers and whatnot. It's like, why would anybody attack an EMT? Why would you even need to teach people that? So, I mean, it's interesting that people kind of like, they hear about it and they're like, oh my God, that's terrible. And then they forget again. And it's absolutely fascinating how this is a rampant problem. I mean, the epidemic with violence in healthcare, you and I are very well schooled in, very well aware, and all the other instructors and everybody who's taken this program is. And then the general public hears about an incident like this or incidents, and like 1 or 2 weeks later, they completely forget. So it's a very frustrating realism that we are dealing with, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and of course, like I said, I feel so blessed anymore because now I have so many people, and the joke is, of course, now that I've got enough people drinking the Kool-Aid, I just drive the bus and pass out the Kool-Aid now. Where for the longest time I felt like I was completely alone because people would ridicule. Both in law enforcement and on the EMS side, there's no need for that, or it's not a problem, and it's not a, and it's like, look, the easiest way I can say why the public looks at us and goes, who'd want to beat up a paramedic? Who'd want to choke a nurse? Who'd want to kick a nurse? They have the same problem with the definition of what is or what isn't a patient. Because if, let's say you're a police officer or a judge or a prosecutor or someone sitting on the jury, and you hear, a patient attacking a healthcare worker, the average person can only equate a patient to what their personal experience is. And so if, the only dealing I've ever had with a person being a patient would say, be my father having a stroke. And, while they were trying to intubate him or start an IV or something in the emergency room, or the paramedics were, he's scratching the medics, he's clawing at him, he's doing something, but yet he's having a stroke. So he's out of his mind and he wasn't trying to hurt them. And so, see, that's what people will do is they go, well, it must, they didn't mean it. When my dad was having that stroke, he didn't mean to scratch that medic. He didn't mean to punch that medic. He didn't mean to slap that medic. That's one thing, versus the person who's high or drunk and commits the crime. And so the only part that I'm asking is that people be just as reasonable. So if a person was high or drunk and they ran over your child in front of your house, did the police show up and say, well, he didn't mean it, he was drunk? Of course not. If the guy was drunk or high, robs, rapes, or murders someone, do the police go, he didn't mean it because he was high? No. He still has to answer for those crimes. And that's all we're asking, is that we go, look, give the same consideration, because many states have laws specific to being attacked on the job as a healthcare provider. Well, why in the hell is there a law if there's not even a problem? And so while penalty isn't protection, it certainly proves that there's a problem. And yet it's the same thing. So see, you have people that aren't frontline, so they're not dealing with those people. And so those people can sit off somewhere else and go, well, it's no big deal, until you bring it and lay it on their lap. And so by you sharing your story actually makes people go, not only on the front line, who go, well, I don't need it, I can just whack them in with an O2 bottle, makes them consider. And then it also makes peers on the nursing side in the ICU consider them to go, well, man, maybe we should at least look into it, because awareness is the first step to change. First they have to be aware of what the truth is before you can even do anything about it. And I'm just as guilty. And that's why we present, I think, the way that, well, I know that's why we present the way that we do, is because you can't tell an alpha anything. I could no more have walked in that classroom in Jersey City and turned around and said, this is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be, and this is why, because I said so. And everybody in that room would have went, yeah, okay, whatever there, joker. But because I went in and said, guys, you know the truth. I'm just going to, show it to you up here. And I understand I'm never arguing with you. I will never argue with you. What I'm going to do is show you how the culture has caused a perception that is not true. And as you slowly, slowly, slowly build it, you begin to see the people then come to your side because they start going, holy cow. Why? Because I am them. They are me. You are me. I am you. We are 100% wired the same. The accents may be a little bit different. Where we live may be a little bit different, but every bit of it, brother, is relative. So I've seen the same thing, whether it is in Jersey City or whether it was in a small town, place where I had 8 people in a classroom total. It's 100% the same. It's just relative. So it's all dependent upon numbers, number of staff, number of calls you run, but guaranteed we all run the same kind of people. All run the same kind of people, and we are wired the same. We got into it for the same reasons. We care about the same things. Our families care about the same things. It's just very interesting when you get that chance to step back and see it, the big picture, and you go, oh my gosh, it's not just one thing. It wasn't just a technique, or it's not just the talking to someone. It's not just the where I stand. It's not just the what do I think. I mean, it all has to be together for it to even make sense. And we're machine gunning, a week's worth of material into 16 hours that, you've got a majority of people saying, first of all, there's no need. But by the end of the 16 hours, they're going, holy crap, everybody should be doing this. And it all just has to do with the truth. We just want the truth. But before I change gears or we switch off, is there anything that you've noticed now that you've been teaching that you would really like people to know? Is it something that you've seen? And I know I'm just throwing this out there at you, but is it like, what do you think? Been teaching for a while, is there something, if you had another peer, someone who was an RN ICU, or an RN in the ICU, or the critical care nurse, or someone that would be your peer, something that you might go, hey guys, this is why you should, at least check this out or listen to the message. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
I'm very passionate about it myself, but one of the major things that's been happening as of late, I mean, like I said, we've been teaching it for about a year now, and we've gotten quite a number of our people trained up, is that, and it's extremely gratifying, 2 EMTs in particular, on separate occasions, come to me and say, you know what, brother, we had a bad situation the other night, right off the bat, the things that you taught us got out. And both times they were like, you know what, if they said to me, if we didn't get out as fast as we did, that might have gone south very fast. So, one of the hard parts about prevention is that you can't really quantify necessarily how many times you avoid a disaster. I mean, that's just the simple fact. I mean, that's the biggest issue. But it's really nice when you come across situations like that where, people who I trained up with the other instructors come to me afterwards and give real life examples of how, hey, your training worked. And that I take very much to heart, and very gratifying that, however much longer I'm in this profession, that I'm enacting real change that may actually improve the lives and the well-being of the future professionals in this job. So that was a wonderful thing to have happen to me.
And I'll tell you, man, it's pretty cool because it's like, believe it or not, those are the overwhelming majority. So if I said, if we got 98% of what our success stories are, they are exactly what you just said, that somebody will come later, and whether we send me a message or, I get it through a text, an email, a Facebook post or something, but they're like, man, you're not gonna believe what happened. And we did this and this and this and this and blah. And it is that, you're exactly right. It's so difficult when you go, people will be like, how do we know your stuff works? Well, first of all, tell me what you got that's working right now. You know what I mean? Tell me what your numbers are now. But the other thing is that what you just said is golden, because it's the recognition ahead of time. And I cannot stress it enough that, we keep saying it. We're like, look, man, if you've resorted to a technique, it's because you missed a tactic somewhere. We're all human. We show up looking for patients, and what we're not always doing is paying attention to the little things. And so sometimes the human animal can be pounding on people's heads going, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And they will still stay connected because they're worried about getting in trouble. They're worried about patient abandonment. And then we're the only critter on the planet that will refuse to listen to our safety signal. If a twig cracks, my dog's going to go. And then once it dawns on him that it's not a big deal, okay, lays back down. But we are the only ones that will do everything that we can to say that monster is not a monster. That monster's not there. It's not going to touch me. The train is about to hit my car, but if I pretend it's not there, if I pull up the sheet and that train, you know, it's not going to touch me. We're the only critter on the planet that does that. But when you get people that come back and tell you about something working ahead of time, I mean, that's the best, because again, how do you, you know, if you didn't get cancer to begin with, how much better is that than trying to cure it? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, if you didn't have the incident because of something, and often, you know, our people don't realize how much of a role they play in a violent encounter until we really show it to them, you know, and then once they really see that, they go, holy crap. You mean, you know, the body language, or the microwave versus the crock pot, the distancing, the how I'm speaking to someone, the what, you know, what my body is saying, does it match what my voice be in control, and when should I be offering care, and you know what I mean? It's that type of stuff that they have to put together, because the bad guy didn't come to class, right? So the bad guys don't know how they're supposed to attack you. So if you give the people all the stuff that leads up to it, and then some things to, you know, to go, oh crap, I'm 5 steps deep in this thing now, how do I get out? You know, that's a win, man, if they recognize it ahead of time. So that's fantastic. What about, you know, because we say it a lot, and I think that's what you were kind of alluding to, or not alluding to, but you mentioned, was that, you know, you and I are now, we're not spring chickens anymore. And I think we realized that the culture change that we're trying to affect is for that generation that follows. You know what I mean? Those kids that are, you know, 13, 14, 15 right now, they're going to be coming up. Because if we would have told them in school, whether it be nursing school, EMT school, paramedic school, if we just said, look, you know, while 80% of the population is still great, you know, 20% of the crime is, or I'm sorry, 80% of criminal activities committed by 20% of the population. That means 8 out of 10 people are still good folks. They're not going to want to attack you. However, attacks do happen, and these are things that we can do to recognize ahead of time, to mitigate it, to escape should the need be. And if we painted the picture for what they really were going to face, we wouldn't be in the problem that we're in now. Because it's funny that, you know, that first 4 hours, if you have someone that's fresh out of school, I mean, they're brand new EMTs, brand new medics or whatever, or they're in school and we do the opening, they look at you like you're, you know, like you said, like you got 3 heads. They're like, well, yeah, I just came from working down here at the Circle K or the McDonald's or the fast food or the big box, and nobody was allowed to beat us up there without somebody calling the police. You know, if they threw the fries on me because the fries were cold and said they were going to kick my butt, I could defend myself, and then I was able to call the police. But, you know, so they don't have a problem. It's once we've been says, you know, you being kicked, punched, slapped, scratched, threatened to have your, you know, house burnt down, raped, murdered, whatever. And then that person tried to do that. Oh, you just got to accept that the same as if it was a grandma who didn't mean it. You know, once you reveal them the truth, it's people like you that are helping make it better for the group that follows. But is there anything else that that you so when let me say it like this. How about the skills? So we got the mental aspect, we got the customer service aspect, and you mentioned that the skills were not only relevant, but now that you're teaching them, and you have been for about a year, does it seem like your people pick up on them pretty quick? And is there a difference between winning a fight with those skills versus winning in self-defense? I mean, what are your thoughts on the skills that we teach to the people?
Oh, absolutely. You know, like I said, I mean, I had a lot of experience with martial arts, much like you had, prior to becoming an EMT even. And I always said that if we're going to teach a course, or if there was going to be a course that we promote, it has to have a physical aspect of it. I mean, I've taken, over the years, both as a EMS person and an RN, I've taken a lot of webinars and things along those lines, online programs that talk about de-escalation techniques, you know, helping hands for mentally ill, whatnot. And they were all well-meaning, but there definitely needed to be a physical component, because there is a point where, you know, you're going to have to get hands-on, where either you didn't signs, you weren't paying attention, something snuck up on you, or just as likely as you just end up in a violent situation that you couldn't have avoided. And the good thing about this program, and with the physical techniques that we teach, is that they're so easy for people to learn. And we've had experienced people, we've had Marines go through, we've had Iraq and Afghanistan vets go through, police officers who have gone through it. individuals who, we had one individual who told us in his all his life he's never had somebody throw a punch at him in anger. So, you know, it runs the gamut. And the people who have a lot of combat experience are just as impressed as the ones who have no experience. And the main reason is that sitting techniques were taught, whether it's BJJ, Krav, karate, the military, they're about control and dominance. EMS worker, it's not about controlling and dominating an opponent. It's about defending yourself in a way that is you know, defendable in court and is measurable to the attack. And it could very well be that you need to exert lethal force on an individual. I mean, if he's coming at you with a knife, or if he's, you know, got you by the throat and you're being choked out, I mean, simple fact is, you know, you may have to level. But most of the times, we are not at that level. And by not having the open-handed defensive techniques, the more low-level techniques that we teach in this course, to get out of the situation, to escape, the only thing, like you always say, you know, if the only thing you have is a hammer, everything's going to look like a nail. If the only type of equipment you have is a crike, people, because if you have no other option, that's what you're going to defer to. So even the individuals who have a considerable amount of skills and are very good martial artists and whatnot, we're teaching here because they realize that this is another set of tools in the toolbox that they can reference in a less lethal situation. And the overall response has been really good from all the students of all different levels of skills.
Well, and it's yeah, and that's just the thing, because if I'm doing, you know, my martial arts and I'm doing a martial arts thing, if I was training with law enforcement or teaching law enforcement, I'm teaching them law enforcement things. But you know, when it comes to healthcare, you know, we're a unique animal. Nobody faces what we face. Not my martial arts people, not my law enforcement people ever had to go in a moment. Sir, are you trying to punch me because your blood sugar's out of whack? You know what I mean? They don't have to think like that. So there's that extra pause, which is why we have to do what we have to do for that moment in time. Maybe that's when, using a specific skill, that our people go, oh crap, this was a patient, versus, oh crap, this is an aggressor. They at least have that ability to now, you know, make a difference. Because if the one thing that we have to agree upon is that an 80-year-old nursing home woman could reach up and in an instant grab your throat identically to a 22-year-old person high on bath salts reaches up and grabs your throat. One had no intent to harm you and was only confused and afraid of you. The other person had full intent to harm you, and you know, were purposeful in their motions. So when you see it and have your people break it down like that, now they have a critical thinking skill. Because if, say again, that martial artist, that prior military, responds to the grandma identically as he or she would have to the person who's attacking them on the street, you know, things can go bad real quick, and vice versa, you know. So that's the reason that they have to have that whole patient versus aggressor and the ability to recognize either one. But, you know, I guess we'll wrap this piece up here. We were going to talk about a little bit of administrative stuff. Is there anything else that comes to mind, anything you want to say to anybody that might be watching it, you know, anything at all?
I mean, the main message, that if I had to get any message across, is just the fact that this is an awesome program. It's fully encompassing. It takes in the physical technique aspects, the mental aspects. And, you know, when we do our comments at the end of the class, I mean, it's exactly like you said, 2/3 of the 16 hours isn't enough. And I mean, a lot of people will take, you know, ACLS, PHTLS, you know, a lot of other courses, and 16 hours is agony. And in our course, most of our comments are like, I wish this class was longer. I wish we could go over it more. I wish we could practice more. The overwhelming response is awesome. And I'm very proud to be doing it, and I look to continue doing it. And I really appreciate you having me.
Well, I'm thankful. Like I said, I'm thankful, man. Your guys' group was really something. Really, really something. Like I said, yours was one of those sledgehammer to the face moments that everybody then, no matter who they were, had to go, you know, and then you just had, it was just neat. I mean, it was neat. It was a neat trip for me, and I was very, honored to get a chance to go up there and to meet you guys like I did. But we're going to go ahead and we'll end this. I'd like to thank Ed for hanging out with me and kind of talking about what he thought before the class, what he thought during the class, and then what he's been thinking since he's been teaching. And also thank him very much for sharing his story of being, knocked out for like 5 minutes. And that's a long flipping knockout. But anyway, very thankful that he's able to share the message with the crew up there at Jersey City. And until next time, we'll see you soon. So I'm going to hit the stop.